Once again, another deck profile. A bit late on this one, but it's the first Destined one to show up, which is Levidras. It's the one I've been looking forward to from the Destined Showdown because of its design. The insect-like dragon design just looks very cool, and the playstyle is also a bit unique that it kind of brings back the force markers with a little restriction. But this is overall a fun deck, and I really like the design, so I just built the deck. Yes, I know it's a bit late, but I've been waiting for my cards to come in. For some reason, there was delayed in shipment, so now I have it. But anyway, so how this deck runs is that it basically focuses on these infinite eye markers. You must have at most 10, maybe have 7 at the least. Just because 1 for each rearguard circle, and that includes your opponent, so that's a total of 10. But the Infinite Eyes markers, as you can tell, does absolutely nothing. It all relies on having Levidras. But other than that, there's really not much to say about the deck other than there is a hindrant weakness right now in the deck since it is just been introduced, is that it really relies you on going second and needing 3. Levidras itself can only generate 2, but if you went second, you could actually generate 4. And you need at least 3 for you to be at full power basically. So that is one hindrance, and another hindrance is that we are getting a new form in the next set immediately, so that's a big surprise, so I'm doing this deck profile now. But the hindrance of this base form one is that the Infinite Eyes markers must be spread out from you and your opponent. Compared to the new form, which will come later on, spoiler, you can choose where to put them rather than 1 for you and 1 for your opponent. So there's a huge difference right there, and that will be explained why with Levidras itself. But anyway, let's just begin with the deck profile with, of course, the Ride deck. Starting off, I started with Stag Kniper Dragon. Of course, being the dragon nature theme, I just of course run this as the starter. And besides, you're going to need to run it for the Ride line, in which we go to Scorp Piercer Dragon, where when you have the Stag Kniper Dragon in Soul, you can ride your grade 2 without cost. So it's just basically free of riding, in which you ride this for free of Mantis Type Dragon, where when your Levidras rides on top of it, you can Energy Blast 3 and look at top 5 cards of your deck for 1 greater or less card from among them and put it to your hand. That is actually very strong, even for Energy Blast 3. And because of this type of skill, you technically have a hindrance on running those cyclers because this already uses energy in the early game, and it is a bit of a weakness that you're going to be using a bit of energy in the early game, but not really so in the late game. But at the same time, not really. But overall, of course, this is pretty good just to set up your plays. In which we go to Levidras itself. So it has 3 skills. The first one is that you can counterblast 1, put 1 Infinite Eyes marker on one of your circles and 1 on your opponent. You're going to need to keep in mind that you need to spread them in different columns as well, because it's going to link to the second skill where when an Infinite Eyes marker unit attacks, in your side, it gets plus 10k. On your opponent's side, it loses 10k, and you can remove that marker to also draw a card. So it can be good both offense and defense. Of course, a late draw can also suck as well, but considering that it minuses 10k as well on your opponent, that's actually pretty good. But the third skill is why I say you're going to need to go second, is also because of the support, where you can Soul Blast 1 in the Divine skill. If your opponent's at least at grade 3, put another Infinite Eyes marker on your side and your opponent, and this card gets with 10k 1 crit. So yeah, it's an early game advantage card, in which you just heavily rely on its support because you need the Infinite Eyes to generate for this one, and then the support just does the rest. Yeah, there's really not much to say about this one other than it really just sets you up for a boss unit card. And now to the main deck itself. So first off, Persona, so you of course have to run 3 more copies. And then I run 2 Search Rune for Infinite Knowledge. Yes, I see many people don't run this, but considering that we are instantly getting a new form and we're going to have a lot more support, I decided to just run this as a budget option for now because I already know it's going to get instantly replaced. But running this card isn't too bad either, especially using it at the late game where you play it by Energy Blasting 2 while your Vanguard is Levidras. Choose a card that is grade less than or equal to your Vanguard, and if it's a unit, call it to rearguard, and then it gets plus 5k power for every Infinite Eyes marker in the same column as that unit. Hence why you do want those Infinite Eyes marker and you want to put them in specific columns. In fact, it also counts on your opponent's column. So if you have 1 and your opponent has 1 in the same column, that's plus 10k. And that extra 10k buff can be very helpful, especially for a deck that can do multi-attack in a similar way of Magnolia. And also it's another way to just get back some cards, so that's why I just run it. Of course, there are better options at the same time, but I like to differentiate my costs a bit, so I just chose this. And now for the grade 2 lineup. For the grade 2 that you must run, It is Anagester, where on place, you can Energy Blast 3 to look at top 2 cards of deck. One goes to hand, the other one goes to top or bottom. This is already very good because you get to choice draw, along with setting up your next drive checks. That is already very powerful, but the next skill is where it makes it even better, where during your turn, if you have at least a grade 3 Vanguard Levidras, and you have 3 or more Infinite Eyes markers, hence why you want to set up 3 and go second, because Divine skill lets you get 4, compared to going first, you only get 2. It gets plus 5k power, and it can attack from the back row if you do not have another copy of this. It's the back row call. So yeah, here's your way of multi-attack, and this is your way to get a 4th attack instantly, so that's why you must run this. And this is what I mean about the support doing everything else. But yeah, this is one of your key pieces for the deck, so you just have to use it. And then I run 4 Huli. Just because on place, if you have Infinite Eyes marker in the same column as the unit, counterblast 1, choose a grade 3 or less card from a draw and call it to rear guard. And if you have at least 3, this card gets plus 10k power. Another reason why that you should go second is the 3 Infinite Eyes marker. But overall, it's very good, and also why you need to choose where to put your Infinite Eyes marker. But anyway, overall, it is pretty good just because it lets you superior call stuff. In fact, it doesn't need to be called from hand. So if you call this from drop zone, you can actually activate skill to call another card. And there's just ways to do multi-call. And then I run the Zombie Dragon that lets you countercharge and goes to soul at the end of the turn if you commit at least 5 attacks or do Alchemy Magic, but you're not doing Alchemy Magic. But 5 attacks is kind of guaranteed in this deck, especially when you're going second because it relies on your opponent having at least grade 3. But yeah, it lets you do countercharge and goes to soul, which is something the deck is having a hard time with right now a bit, is that it does use quite a bit of counterblast with all the combos, superior calling, and the extra skills. And also, going to soul is also not too bad considering that it's just another resource. Now, I would say run Inlet Pulse because that one lets you draw, but considering that we're just going to replace it instantly along with certain other cards, I decided not to get more Inlet Pulse and decided to run this instead. Besides, it's a good alternative. And then we run Sylvan Horn Beast Greg. So this one is actually very viable in this deck considering that you got same column rearguard attacks because that's Magnolia playstyle, and it's just funny that you can combine some of its cards with Levidras. But anyway, when your other unit in the same column as this unit attacks, you can soul blast 1, give it plus 10k powers, and choose all your opponent's rearguards. For that battle, this unit attacked, your opponent cannot use cards with the same grade as those units from hand to the Guardian Circle. Yeah, a guard restrict on a big attacking rearguard. This can actually be very threatening. Of course, since I don't really use this too often and it's just mainly a finisher, I decided to just run this at 2. I did try it at 3, but I never find myself really using this, even though soul is not very heavy. You could run a 3rd copy of this, but I don't really see it as completely necessary, and 2, this is actually going to be taken out instantly once when Imperial comes out. And then another one I run is the Dual Nation Generic for Cater and Stokea because it lets you, when placed from hand, other than during battle, you can look at top card deck, put it to the top or the drop zone, and then you can counterblast 1 to do one of these abilities. Choose a normal order from your drop zone, put it back to hand, or superior call a grade 2 or greater unit from the drop zone, which you do have plenty of, but it's just here for now as basically another option for you to just do stuff. So that's it for the grade 2 lineup. For the grade 1 lineup, the card that you must absolutely run that gives you the 5th attack is the Foxtail. So this is the Levidras booster. 10k boost if you're Vanguard's Levidras, 15k boost if you're boosting Levidras Vanguard. But the additional skill that it gets is that you can counterblast 1 and then choose one of your back row rear guards and it can attack from the back row, and it also gives it plus 10k. This card just really helps out Levidras by a lot for giving you that extra 5th attack. So overall, it's just a must play, and you do want to see this as soon as possible. Yes, 4 can be a bit too much, so I can say you can take it out to 3, but you do still want to see this as soon as possible. And then because counterblast is a little heavy in this deck, I run the Clarence, where when this unit attacks or boosts, very important considering that all the additional attacks that you can give. If you have Infinite Eyes markers in the same column as this unit, that includes your opponent, remember that. And if you did not countercharge during turn, you can put it soul to countercharge 1. Once again, another countercharger and another soul charge engine, although soul hasn't been too much of an issue so far. And then finally the 2 Theantha, just so you can call more stuff, and I might still keep this in even with Imperial coming out. And finally 4 PGs, because PGs. And then for the trigger lineup, OT, obviously. 8 crits, 3 draws, so you can see your pieces as soon as possible. And finally 4 heals, 2 being counter heals. So that's this deck profile on my Levidras deck. What do you guys think of it? What other cards would you recommend, and what other changes would you make? I just gave you my deck list, but of course with at the moment few substitutes, like that zombie dragon instead of using inlet pulse just because I have them and I'm not getting more inlet pulse, so I'm gonna replace them instantly. And another reason is that we're getting a new form of Levidras immediately after the set it was introduced, so you're just gonna be replacing a lot of your cards anyway, and that's where the deck is really gonna function. So that's why I'm doing this deck profile now as a base form before doing the evolve form. But other than that, the deck is a fun deck, even though it's meant to go second at the moment just because of how it functions. As you can tell, most of the skills of the support requires you to have at least 3 infinitized markers, and you can only generate 2 per turn. But if you go second, you got divine skill to generate the 3rd and 4th one. But other than that, the deck is still pretty fun. It has the offense and defense mechanic, which is what I kind of like, and also the design of being a bug-like dragon. And the 5 attack style with the back row is also pretty nice. But other than that, that's for this, and see you next time.